Bloomington IU community awesomeness. I am Katie Blair. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Political and Public Affairs at the ACLU of Indiana. I just added the public affairs part. It's actually public policy, but I'm nervous, and I've only said that title like once in public before, so thank you. Thank my boss for giving me that title. Anyway, so thanks for coming. This is First Wednesdays, a survival guide. We've taken this kind of panel discussion on the road to different communities, each one different and looping in community organizations as we go. So I just want to do a really quick thank you to the IU Maurer School of Law chapter of the American Constitutional Law Society. Law Students for Reproductive Justice, the Black Law Students Association, UndocuHoosiers Bloomington, and then one more after that. And the IU Muslim Student Association. And I want to thank the members of our panel. We've got Alexis Burr, who's a member of the Commission on, I'm going to start from where they go. Right here we've got Esmeralda Martinez. She's the president of UndocuHoosiers Bloomington. We have Alexis Burr, a member of the Commission on Multicultural Understanding and the former director of Campus Unity, Indiana Memorial Union Board. She's amazing. Everyone here is. Luma Khabbaz, is that how you spell your name, ma'am? Or say your name? Okay, great. She's the president of the Muslim Student Association of IU. Then we've got Christy Gillespie. She's the CEO and president of Planned Parenthood of Indiana and Kentucky. And my boss, to make me look really good, Jane Henegar, the executive director of the ACLU of Indiana. Thank you. So, the people that each of our organizations serve are, in one way or another, threatened by the proposed or put in place policies and hateful rhetoric coming out of the White House today. Since January, just to give you a few of the highlights, lowlights, we've seen a ban on Muslims traveling into our country, the delegitimization of the press. We've seen a rollback in protections for transgender students, the threat of some truly scary healthcare reform, an assault on voting rights, a revitalized war on drugs, increased police militarization, a transgender ban in the military, increased ICE raids, the continued promise of a wall, Nazis and white supremacists marching in our streets, and oh yeah, DACA was revoked yesterday. Yeah, so it feels pretty soul-crushing, but we've also seen folks rally around us like never before. We've seen a boost in ACLU membership. Thank you, members here tonight. A large outpouring of folks wanting to volunteer for our organizations, more people willing to speak out and tell their actual stories, and bigger rally numbers than ever. So there's the highlight of that. But all of us here tonight are here because all of you here and me, we're here because we want to learn how we can help, how we can become active citizens, and how we can keep America great. I'm going to jump right in now with our first question, all right? Thank you. Ashley, could you turn off the beautiful piano music playing in the background? I'm feeling really chill, but thank you. All right. So I'm going to start. You've all been to a bunch of panels, so I'm going to just start. We've got Esmeralda, and it's just a real audio wonder. I'm going to start, and I'll just start with you, Esmeralda, and you can just go on through. And I want this to be, not this question, but some other ones, I want you to all be able to feel like conversational. But for the first one, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization you're representing? Yeah. You're going to want to grab that mic, probably, and talk into it.
Not a bad idea. So I'm Esmeralda Martinez, as Katie had mentioned. I'm part of UndocuHoosiers Bloomington. What we advocate is just for undocumented rights, whether it be students or just like the general community overall. A lot of what we have been doing in the past 12 months now has just been trying to like raise awareness of like the realities that undocumented communities are facing, but also to just do a lot of like fundraising, because we provide scholarships for a couple of undocumented students. And a big push has also just been towards like administrative changes here at IU, just trying to get IU to become a sanctuary campus, or just to get more like financial support for undocumented students, since they don't get the in-state tuition that a lot of them like deserve, having lived in Indiana for the majority of their lives. And we do a lot, because obviously there's a lot of things that are not addressed within the undocumented community. What I can think of that is the overall components of what we take care of.
Thank you. Alexis?
Hello, everyone. That's my voice. Wow. So I'm Alexis. We addressed that. I serve on the Commission on Multicultural Understanding, which runs out of the Division of Student Affairs on campus. And then I was a director of Campus Unity on the Indiana Memorial Union Board. That's a lot. So we are the largest programming body on campus, so we do a lot of lectures. A lot of students know us for concerts and things of that nature, but pretty much run the gamut of programming. But COMU, essentially, as it operates now, we offer funding opportunities for groups and students on campus who promote our values. So what we want to do is make sure that diversity and programming that comes along with that is celebrated on campus. So we like to give people opportunities to be able to fund their programs for furthering that. And then as director of Campus Unity, that was pretty like broad, and whatever was happening at the time, I tried to address. So, yeah.
Should I take this one? I'm in the middle, so it doesn't. You want to go this one? Thank you. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? I can't tell how loud I am. Okay, so I'm Luma, as Katie mentioned. I am the president of the Muslim Student Association at IU. And basically what the Muslim Student Association does is like two main things. We obviously provide resources and events for Muslim students on campus for them to continue practicing their faith in the way they feel fit. So we always have Friday prayers. We have events, social events, religious events, philanthropy events, things like that. But another really important thing that we do is try to be advocates for students all across campus from marginalized groups, especially because we recognize that the Muslim population at IU and elsewhere is not monolithic, and there are a lot of intersections with the MSA. And even when we can't always find those intersections, we like to help out across campus and across the community in any way we can, because it's a good thing to do, and it's really important for people to have a good perception on Muslims, if we're being honest. But really, I think that more of like what we do will come out more in the rest of the panel, so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Christy.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Christy Gillespie, and I'm the president and CEO of Planned Parenthood in Kentucky. And so for those of you who don't know what Planned Parenthood does, we provide, we help you plan your parenthood. Yeah. More specifically, we provide reproductive health services, preventive services, education about reproductive health, and advocate lots of advocacy on reproductive health and reproductive rights. I am a native Hoosier and grew up in the Newcastle area. and have lived in Indianapolis for the last 27 years doing lots of work in community development, human services, and social justice, and just took over as president and CEO of Planned Parenthood on July 1.
Jane.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jane Henegar. I am first and foremost not only a native Hoosier, but a native of Monroe County. And so I want to start off by thanking, and a graduate of this law school. Sorry, forgot that part too. I want to start off with thanking the students whose organizations are hosting us here. I want to thank Professor Don Johnson, who is a source of many great things, not only at the law school, but in our community. And a little bit of help with her in the community part is her incredible husband, Mayor Hamilton. So I want to thank them and thank all of you for everything you do to make my hometown an awesome place, not just every day, but an awesome place for us to come here and talk about ways that we can all work to make sure that our country is the country that we believe it can be, which goes to what the work of the ACLU is. We hold government accountable to the promises of the letter and the spirit of the Constitution. So the goals embedded in the Constitution of freedom, equality, liberty, justice, we hold government to task when they violate those promises and intrude on individuals' rights. We advocate on the spectrum of those rights, from free speech and freedom of religion to privacy and surveillance, racial justice, LGBTQ rights, reproductive rights, and freedom from discrimination on a number of bases. So what we hope to convey in this panel, as we have around the state, is that we, the people, have the tools to make sure that our government, our country, reflects the values we believe as Americans we share. And that's not a self-activating tool, the Constitution. It requires us to take action, not just at the ballot box, but to make sure that our voices are heard in a variety of ways, and we're going to talk about those variety of ways. Big and small, it's all important, and it's only by using all of those tools, using all of those levers, are we going to get a country that we are proud of.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so for my second question, I'm just going to popcorn this one because I cannot stand the back and forth, so popcorn, keeping it funky. Luma, what are the issues that your organization is currently tackling, and what can people both on campus and in the broader community do to support your organization and the people that you advocate for? That's just a little question. It's no big deal.
All right, let me try to address this, and you can let me know if I miss any of the points. So I guess our organization faces internal and external problems, and so I'm assuming you want me to talk about the external problems predominantly.
Yeah, I think that might be.
There are a lot of problems that we just need to work out ourselves, but externally, I guess Katie touched on the Muslim the Muslim ban that was not a Muslim ban, but it was only Muslim majority countries. And the travel ban that was first instated in January, and so that right off the bat was definitely an issue for us because many of our members come from these countries, and we're really concerned that even if they did have citizenships or green cards, or maybe they just had a visa, that they weren't going to be able to go home to see their family for fear of not being able to return. I mean, the day it happened, one of my friend's aunts was not able to come into the country from O'Hare to see her sick mother because she was coming from Saudi Arabia with a visa. So it immediately hit us, and obviously people came to us, which is kind of scary because I'm a junior in college, but I know that we really are the lifeline and the support system for a lot of our students on campus, and a lot of them are graduate students, some of them are professors, some of them are just community members that look to us. So that is definitely like a problem that we face. Another thing that is kind of always been happening, but especially was heightened after 9/11 and then after 2016, is Islamophobia and racism. I grew up most of my childhood post 9/11, and I did see things that, like, I did get comments and I did hear things that were bad. I always kind of felt like my parents were being paranoid, actually, when they'd be like, oh, this person is racist. And I'm like, no, you're just being paranoid. But, like, thinking back, they were not being paranoid. But I have never seen Islamophobia and racism in the way I see it today. Luckily, I go to IU, and it's a pretty liberal campus, and I don't face that many issues. But my little sister is in middle school, not here, but I've heard a lot of the stories translate, but in Indiana. And she has been facing like so much cyberbullying and harassment. And it's things that, like, I don't doubt that some people thought about me when I was in middle school, but no one ever had the guts to say it. But people are definitely emboldened now that because they see, I mean, the leader of their country saying these things and facing no consequences, that they can obviously say those things too. So those are like the two main issues, and they've always sort of been a problem, but to put it in perspective, they really have not been worse in my perspective than they are now. And there are a number of things that people can do. Obviously, like, educate yourself, and I don't mean like go on like Wikipedia and educate yourself. I mean like actually like ask people, but come up with like critical questions first. Don't go up to someone and say, tell me about Islam, because that is so frustrating for me because it's exhaustive, and I'm sure a lot of the panel members and a lot of people can relate that when you represent a certain group, people expect you to educate them. And I am happy to educate people, but when it comes to just like, tell me everything, like, that's exhausting, and I shouldn't have to be the person that, you know, like, makes you aware of a lot of things. So if you can come up with like critical questions before you ask someone to educate you or to correct you, that definitely is helpful, because I mean, I feel the necessity when people tell me, like, educate me, but it's really frustrating because I'm a full-time student and I'm also 20 years old and I don't have all the answers. But that's obviously like the most important one. I don't know how much you want me to go on. Like, I want to like let other people answer so I can kind of like piggyback off their answers.
Do it.
All right.
Who
wants to answer that?
Yeah. Who wants to jump in?
Can we repeat the question?
Yeah, let me just redo this. Okay, Alexis, can you tell me what are the issues that your organization is currently tackling, and what can people both on campus and in the broader community do to support you and the folks that you advocate for?
I sort of answered it.
Okay. So I'm in not a special situation, but I'm not like the leader of any organization. I just kind of like hip hop everywhere, you know. So I guess I can only speak about personally what I think would be helpful. But COMU and I guess Union Board, the two I talked about, because we're representative of the entire campus, I think that it's been very important to reach out to other smaller organizations, especially organizations where there are marginalized people, to make sure that they are being included in conversations, that they have a seat at the table, that they have access to kind of like things like this. So I think it's just important to, in terms of Union Board, and not just Union Board, I think it's important that students get involved in general, and that they are represented in things like this. And then in terms of COMU, I think that it's important that people continue to report bias incidents, meaning that like, so for instance, I had an incident this summer, and I was standing after work. I worked for orientation, minding my business, listening to my podcast, waiting for the bus. And a group of white male students rode past in a truck and yelled a racial slur at me. And so, because of course I'm part of all of these things, I know like that's important to like report. Because administration needs to know what's going on. And I think more than that, it's just important for people to know that like it's 2017. That was like June. That's like yesterday that this is happening. So like there have been a lot of like conversations, I think, over the years in terms of younger people getting more involved in social justice. Like, oh, you're being dramatic. Like, oh, racism is not like what you think it is. But like that happened to me, a student here. And I'm sure it's not just indicative of IU. I think that universities are kind of like microcosms of general society. So like this is happening everywhere. So I think incidents like those being reported is important so that people can do something about it and so that we have evidence to see that it's happening. So incidents reporting, and then I think for students specifically, I guess reaching a hand down. For me, I made sure that I was reaching down for underclassmen to kind of be where I was. So even if I couldn't get something done, that maybe someone else behind me could do it. I hope that answered the question.
I think you did a good job.
Great.
Yeah, can I actually kind of add to that? Alexis brought up a point that I forgot to mention with the you're being dramatic thing. I think the hardest thing that a lot of marginalized groups have to deal with is that before they can even start to address their concerns, they have to validate them. You know, we have to feel like we need to validate our concerns before we can even start to address them. And that's the easiest thing that people that are not in this marginalized group can help us with. Like, I don't want to feel like gaslighted. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term, like people making me feel like I'm crazy or like I'm paranoid, like I made my parents feel, or like I'm just seeing or just finding a reason to see something that's not there. And that's the most frustrating thing, because then I spend all my time and energy trying to prove to people that I'm being marginalized instead of trying to solve these issues. So that was a really good point. Like, we shouldn't have to validate ourselves. You know, people should not gaslight marginalized groups and believe that there is a problem, or else we're going to be stuck in this defensive rut.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Christy, what are the issues that your organization is tackling, and what can people on the campus and community do to support the folks you advocate for?
Okay, thank you. So I think the big issue that Planned Parenthood has been dealing with for the last 10 months now has been what you have heard described as defunding Planned Parenthood on the federal level. So I just want to take a minute or two and talk about the phrase defunding Planned Parenthood, because I think it misrepresents what that means. So first of all, just to dispel any myth of what defunding means, and if you already know this, I urge you to share this with your friends and family. First of all, Planned Parenthood does not have a line item in the budget. We do not get a grant full of money that we just get to spend of taxpayers' money however we see fit. What Planned Parenthood is a Medicaid healthcare provider, which means that patients choose us who are on Medicaid to come for our healthcare services. And so when you hear the phrase defund Planned Parenthood, what that means is they will not allow Planned Parenthood to be a Medicaid healthcare provider. So if that happens, Planned Parenthood does not go away. I mean, let's just be clear. We might have to recalibrate, but we are not going to shut down because we are not a Medicaid provider. However, the patients that are Medicaid patients that want to choose to come to Planned Parenthood, those are the people that are hurt by this defunding Planned Parenthood. And as far as we're concerned, we are about our patients. That is our mission, to serve the patients. And so just keep that in mind when you hear that phrase. It's really about eliminating a healthcare choice for patients who are on Medicaid. That's what it is. It's not defunding Planned Parenthood. So that's kind of the first issue. The second issue that we're facing Of course, will be from the Indiana State Legislature and Kentucky State Legislatures. We represent both states. But Jane and I were talking earlier, and I think Jane concluded that 5 out of the last 6 Indiana legislatures have contained some sort of legislation that is anti-reproductive freedom bill. And so we expect there will be something in 2018. And so we'll be keeping an eye on that as well. In terms of what all of you can do, I would share with you 3 things. So the first one is you can be a patient of Planned Parenthood. We don't only just serve patients on Medicaid, but we serve patients who have private insurance. And we also serve patients who don't have insurance and can self-pay. We do a sliding scale. So you can be our patient, or your friends and family can be our patient. The second thing is you can be a voice. And I can't tell you over the last 10 months the amount of voices that have raised in support of Planned Parenthood behind our national campaign of I Stand with Planned Parenthood. You've probably, how many of you have seen the I Stand with Planned? Yes, everybody, great. So everyone is lifting their voices to support us, and so that has to continue. And then finally, of course, financial support is always important. Jane will probably talk about this too, but for our affiliate, Planned Parenthood of Indiana and Kentucky, we are experiencing almost triple of our donor base since last November. So our supporters are really stepping up with their pocketbooks as well. So those are the 3 things that you can do to help us as we continue advocating for reproductive rights and to make sure that Medicaid patients can access the services if they choose to do that.
Thank you, Christy. Esmeralda,
Sorry, but you'll probably be excellent.
what are the issues your organization is tackling? What can people on campus and the community do to help?
So, like I mentioned before, we're kind of all over the place just because we're trying to handle campus concerns while also dealing with like the community that might not necessarily be students. To focus on the campus aspect first, since DACA was revoked yesterday, we now have to like try to talk to administrators again to just see if there's ways that we can financially support undocumented students or what are currently DACA recipients. But because of the whole like legalities behind it, it's been a problem over the past couple of months in general, even just to like declare IU a sanctuary campus. But that's something that like even more so now it's urgent because so the information that was used during the whole like application to get DACA, it can't be shared with DHS, but it's still kind of like up in the air. If you like qualify or if you meet certain requirements, then it's subject to change and things of that situation. But also it can be changed whenever there's they wake up on the wrong side of bed, I guess. And so the financial aspect of UndocuHoosiers is always in dire need just because of the fact that undocumented students don't get the in-state tuition or very few scholarships. So ways that like anyone can help is, like everyone else has mentioned, is like the financial support of just donating to us. But the more political side of it, not that that isn't political, but the actual like political action is just kind of like getting, whether it be President McRobbie of here at IU to start working with the state Congress, which he did mention in the statement that he recently released about IU's like current approach to what is currently happening. He said that they were going to be working with the state Congress to provide adequate policies and protections, whatever that means. But I think what that needs to be entailing, just along with any other policy really, is including the communities that we're supposed to be helping. Because similar to when like Medicaid or SNAP became legitimized, like how often did they actually go and talk to these communities and like ask them what it was that they were experiencing and what do you need? How can we prevent something from happening? It's more of like the political figures, which I'm not saying they're not knowledgeable, but they're not experiencing the same things. And so I think a big part of just any type of like advocacy entails having that actual representation and like hearing the voices, hearing the different experiences, because without it, it's just like, you know, I heard from the grapevine, and realities are so complex that you can't really just go off of that one media stereotype. And so I think that's one of like the pressing issues, I'd say, is just trying to get like proper political representation of undocumented students, which leads to safer like atmospheres and environments for undocumented folks. What more? The whole sanctuary campus aspect also, but that ties in with just having like the political power to do it. Last year, there was a bill that was passed which condemned sanctuary campuses or cities. And so there's legalities that I'm not a law student, so I don't really understand it. But there was like loops in which things could like either work or not work. And so it's just kind of, again, having your administrators or like your more influential figureheads working with like the political representatives, but also just like community members, all of us being involved with communities, even if you don't identify as a Muslim, like going into that community, kind of like Luma was saying, educate yourself by actually placing yourself in those experiences and like listening to people, wanting to like legitimately advocate for one another and like see the greater good of the community and not necessarily of just, I guess, doing it because it's the cool thing to do, you know, or to get like a like on whatever social medias, but just trying to prepare our youth for conditions that like we would want to be living in, which we obviously don't have. I think that's a big important aspect of it all.
Thank you. All right, Jane,
I remember
you know the question?
I remember
All
the
right,
question, Katie.
good. Make it.
At the ACLU, as I suggested earlier, we work on all of the issues that everyone here is facing. And we bring whatever tools we can, whether that's litigation or advocacy, education. We try to use all those levers. So, for instance, one of the 5 cases the ACLU will be arguing in the U.S. Supreme Court this term is on the Muslim ban and the lack of constitutionality of the administration's actions that way. So let me just add, since others panelists have so ably discussed those issues, just another aspect that we're very concerned about at the ACLU. While there are distractions with tweets and with the threat of nuclear war, make no mistake that there are departments of the federal government that are very active. So Jeff Sessions, at the head of the Department of Justice, is knocking down rights and work that's been built to protect the rights of LGBTQ students, individuals and communities across the country who've been victimized by police practices that violate individuals' rights. And the prison policy, drug sentencing, a whole variety of tactics that threaten vulnerable communities across our country. And that work is going on every day at a fast clip. So, and I don't want to alarm you by saying that there's a lot to pay attention to, but there's a lot to pay attention to. I think that the good sign in the last 8 months has been that when we use our power as people, it has real impact. And for those of us who believe in the power for good of our governmental system, believe that the structure of the Constitution, however flawed, can provide protections if we use it properly. The instances of the combined aspect of legal action, of legislative advocacy, and of just plain old protest has been heartening. And I think that if I had any piece of advice, I would say that we just have to keep it up. But the good news is that while the news of Trump fatigue has worried many people for months, they thought we'll just burn out, we can't follow tweets, we can't keep protesting, we can't keep calling, writing, but you know what? We can, and people have proven that they are willing to do so. So I think that should be encouraging to all of us. Discouraging in the fact that our work's not going to be over. Yes, it's true, it's not going to be over for another 3.5 years. So it's a marathon, but the attention we're paying to what our elected officials at every level, our attention to what they're doing is paying off, because democracy gives us the tools and the power, not just at the ballot box, but to affect policy every day of the year. And I'm just so heartened that it's working.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're here. We want to do stuff, but what's worked for you in the past? Can you give me an example of a time that advocacy has worked for you? I'm going back to Luma. She knows.
Okay, so like I said, the MSA and just me in general, like I don't feel like I confine myself to like a group. Like they were saying, like you help out those who need help. But something that I was involved with my freshman year here was directly after our then governor, Mike Pence, said that he was going to ban Syrian refugees from entering the country, and this was when like bans were a big deal. So actually my sister, who just graduated and is amazing, my sister and I and other groups, this was before I was even a part of the MSA, but the MSA was a part of this. We had a rally. Actually, I think it was more like silent. Like I don't know. Actually, I can't remember anymore. But basically, good old-fashioned protesting, which I think is really important. And this kind of brings in like what Jane was saying, that there's a combination. The combination works the best, because we did protest, but we also worked with MoveOn.org. And they were really helpful. They sent us posters. If you've seen a lot of like the Refugees Welcome posters with the Statue of Liberty on the back, they're really cool. They sent us for free. And they helped us do what they called a photo petition, which at the event, they had us hold the signs. And we had like, I think over 200 people, which is like small, but like if you put it in perspective, it was pretty cool that we were able to organize that. And then they sent this photo along with a petition on our behalf to our lawmakers. And this is my example of a time advocacy worked, even though I don't know how much our advocacy really influenced things, because it's hard to track that. I know that I felt really good. I mean, I guess I should have mentioned, I'm actually Syrian. I'm the daughter of Syrian immigrants, and like I'm related to a bunch of Syrian refugees. So it was obviously a really close topic to my heart. But it was really cool to see how the combination of like working with other groups and using our First Amendment rights, but also translating that into actual like action and talking to our lawmakers, because there's only, you know, so much that they can see that we're doing. But if we tell them that we're doing it, I mean, that's the basis. That's how our country should work. And like Jane said, like we can keep doing it. Like there's no limit of the times that we can do it. And I think that it really does make a difference. But I think it's important. Sometimes people forget the other component of like, of actually translating your action. And I think it was cool for people to be a part of that, and they didn't even have to do anything. They just had to be in a picture, which was super cool.
Great, thank you. Alexis, you want to go next?
Sure. So, again, I'm kind of a loner. I jump around. So, I'm going to talk about a time advocacy has personally worked, not like for me, but like me alone acting. So I'm really big on stories. I'm really big on like sharing my story particularly. And I think, and this question is also weird for me because I don't think I can really measure like if it worked. But I just make sure to have conversations with people that are different from me, which sounds like, oh, like, of course, have conversations with, but like, seriously, have conversations with people who are different from you. Even with a couple of the, just people that I've been involved with in different organizations, there have been a lot of white heterosexual men, very privileged. And so it's been really interesting to talk to them about their experiences, talk about my experiences. And so that working means them, not that I'm trying to change anybody's mind, but just offering them different perspectives about things. And it has kind of helped me to understand, I guess, where they're coming from with some of the things that they hold to be true for them that negatively affect me, if that makes sense. And then program-wise, I helped another director on Union Board. Her name is Yasmin. I don't know if she's here, but anyway. Yasmin, we did a panel called The Evolution of the Revolution. And it was pretty much about activism and how just offering people different perspectives about what that looks like. So I didn't really talk about that earlier in terms of what like community people can do. I think for me personally, I've had to think about that. I don't really like to be when I think about activism, I think about like I'm in the front of a rally, like I'm in the front of a protest, and that's what activism is. But I think the panel offered a lot of the people who came the opportunity to see that activism can be not what you make it, because it's like, I mean, I think sitting in here is a form of activism and listening to this. A lot of people have a problem with social media, but social media has moved a lot in these times. Social media taught me a lot, taught me that even I, a black woman, can be problematic, and that I needed to address some of the things within myself. And so it was just really cool to see some of those women come together, or it was a panel of women. So just to have people come and listen to people involved in different aspects of society. So like business owners, people who are the people at the rallies and in the protests, people who are into like technology and stuff. So that was a time that I think worked. You know what I mean? Like I hope that people left the event kind of with a different perspective about how they can add to these conversations and add to what's going on.
Thank you so much. Esmeralda, do you want to go next?
Yeah, for sure. So like Alexis said, it's all about perception. We've managed to get a lot done. We actually were able to get a scholarship for an undocumented student to get housing, which is huge because freshmen have to live on campus, and that's a huge expense. We won't go into all those details, but we were able to provide scholarships and like formal relationship with a cooperative that is going to allow that to like continue. And also, I think one of like the more recent ones that really like make me happy to like be doing the work that I'm doing is after yesterday we started a not a GoFund, but we started fundraising just because it was just like we have an actual, not that we don't have an actual cause to be raising money, but DACA has been revoked, and so the urgency was just more visible. And so in a matter of like not even 24 hours, we raised $1,000. And I think that's just incredible because it shows the urgency, and it's showing that so many people are concerned or being affected by this. So although it's not a way for us to like directly put that money into a person's like bank today, I think it's just, again, like the symbolism behind it, because so many people have been donating, and so we get like just the names to the email, and I'm seeing like names of my peers, and it's just like, we're college students and we're struggling to eat right now, but the fact that we're willing to like donate to such a cause, it's very empowering.
Esmeralda, where can people find that?
Yeah, awesome. Why haven't I said this?
I know, I need to know. I've got my cell phone here right now, connected to my PayPal. I'm going.
So Facebook leads you to our webpage, and it's UndocuHoosiers Bloomington. UndocuHoosiers being one word followed by Bloomington. We also have a webpage. Aaron, shout out homie, has done a great job at just forming that canvas. But that also leads you to our PayPal or funding site. We also have like Facebook, Instagram, and it's all UndocuHoosiers Bloomington. But yeah, all the fundings are definitely going towards a good cause for scholarships and housing. Last year, another accomplishment, depending on perception, is there was a couple of families that were facing deportation, and word got around that like what we do is advocate for undocumented students, and then we kind of just like leave it pretty open-ended so that families in need in this situation reached out to us, and we ended up like providing them with money to help with the legal services. So it just comes back to like we're not just doing stuff within the community of or not Bloomington, but like the university community. So again, just like any type of help is substantial.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll stop.
Oh no, sorry. Christy.
So all the panelists have really talked about locally based advocacy, which is fantastic, but there's many layers of advocacy. So I thought I would talk about, from a national point of view, the healthcare vote that happened in late July, and in quite dramatic fashion. I'm sure many of you probably followed that. So from Planned Parenthood's point of view, the minute that the election results came out, we knew that the defunding was a real opportunity that could actually happen, and certainly lots of changes potentially to Obamacare. So our organizing and advocacy efforts really started back in December. I mentioned before around the I Stand with Planned Parenthood campaign. But even beyond that, the kind of public-facing campaign, of course, our national was doing lots of analysis of the House districts and Senate districts that they thought could potentially be targeted as votes that would protect Planned Parenthood's funding as a Medicaid provider. So all of that was going on behind the scenes. One of the great advantages of being a part of a national network is our national then could match up with the local affiliate with that Senate or Senate senator or House district, so that the affiliate could place local pressure and communications on that elected official and kind of do the work that the other three panelists were talking about. So over the summer, as all of this started to transpire, and it became very evident that the vote was going to be close. And did anybody in here like really follow it the last 2 or 3 days? It was quite dramatic. And so we had an idea of, particularly Murkowski and Collins were key Senate votes that we were going to need. And our local affiliates had been spending a lot of time shoring up support for them to vote the right way on Obamacare, the repeal of Obamacare. And so I think the lesson is protesting is good. Just to reiterate what some of the others have said, protesting and rallies are great. What I would call surgical micro-targeting of elected officials to do the whip counts to see where are we really when it comes to particular legislation is very important. All the editorials, like all of the tactics have to come together with the same message. You don't want to leave. I think my view is we don't know which of those tactics actually pushed that final vote to get to 51, but we don't want to have, after the vote is over, to say, gosh, if we had just done XYZ, maybe that would have pushed it. So my point is we want to do all of those things. You don't want to leave any stone unturned, because at the end of the vote, when a vote like that happens, you don't want to have any regrets. Like, you want to leave everything on the field. And so we felt like, from Planned Parenthood's point of view, that that's exactly what we did, is we just hit on every possible advocacy lever that we possibly could to put us in position to win if the win was possible. And as you all know, it came down in very dramatic fashion at I think 1:30 in the morning Eastern time, with that one vote from John McCain. And so we will never know for sure who was motivated to vote and stick with that vote in those late hours. But we like to think that we left no stone unturned.
Thank you, Christy. I heard a rumor that if you text DEFEND to 22422, you can get involved with Planned Parenthood. So right now, if you'd like to text DEFEND to 22422, you can do all of those things that Christy said and more.
That's a staffer who's doing her job, sending that message. So I hope the moderator is going to let me give 3 quick examples based on issues and tactics that people have already mentioned.
I am the director of advocacy, so I'd love it if you'd talk about it.
So let me take them in reverse chronological order. So first of all, the ACLU of Indiana led the fight in the General Assembly on against RFRA. And gosh, man, was that 2015? 2015.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And we fought mightily. Lots of people told us quietly that they were with us, but because it was a complicated issue, it looked like it was just about defending religious liberty on its face, but people it was a complicated issue and how it could be used to discriminate against women and their reproductive rights, against the LGBTQ community. We had a hard time gaining traction in the legislature, and which led to Governor Pence, the legislature passing it and Governor Pence signing it. So this is an example about the power of social media. So when the ACLU was fighting this fight on a state basis across the country at the time that our bill passed in Indiana, and our governor signed that bill. There were over 20 other state RFRAs being considered in state legislatures across the country, all with the intent to be used, if passed, to discriminate. We had evidence. The other side was clearly telling us. We received their emails. They didn't know that we were receiving their emails, but we just signed up. It was public. It wasn't nefarious or anything. But we knew. They were open about why they wanted to pass these RFRAs. So, but we weren't able to make our case adequately in the General Assembly. But because our state went first, all of that dispersed national attention went like a laser beam, all focused on Indiana. And within 48 hours, the hashtag boycott Indiana was the #1 trending hashtag in the world. I'm going to say in the world.
Yeah,
Who's
the
gonna
whole
disprove
world
me?
in the galaxy.
Definitely nationally.
The galaxy.
Yeah.
It was international.
And, in those 48 hours, lots of things happened, but lots of people stepped up on social media across the country and focused people's attention on this issue and told stories and made the case in a way that we weren't able to command here locally. And the rest, that legislature did a fix. It wasn't perfect, but it, for the first time in our state legislation, talked about protections against discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. And we still have lots of work to do, but it was a first step. The power of social media, undeniable in that relatively small victory. The next example, chronologically, is the Muslim ban in January. That was soon after President Trump was sworn into office. As soon as he signed that executive order, there had been some rumors, but as soon as we saw it, ACLU's lawyers across the country with allied organizations were in courts across the country arguing that it was unconstitutional. While those judges were hearing those cases, people across the country, again, largely with social media, but also everybody watching their CNN and whatever your trusted news source is, they saw people protesting in airports. So by the end of Sunday night, there were tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who had gone and rallied for immigrants, for our colleagues, for our friends, for our neighbors in airports across the country. Judges are human too. Yes, they follow the law. Yes, they are confined by the Constitution and our laws, but they're human too, and they were watching too. So I have no doubt that the fact that people across America knew what this ban was meant to do and knew that it was inconsistent with our American values, those judges took that to heart. And the fact that the administration, and including primarily the president, confirmed our allegations that it was indeed intended to ban primarily Muslims, helped us legally. I will be honest about that. It helps when the president says, "Yes, I should have just banned Muslims." It would have been better.
The jig is up.
That helps. Yeah. And so then the last example I would give is on the DACA repeal. So we all know that for the president's party, immigration has been a volatile topic. We've been unable in this country to get humane, appropriate immigration reform. But I totally believe that it's been the protests, the letters, the calls that we've all made to our legislators, and most importantly, the stories, as we talked about the power of stories, that the stories that members of Congress have heard is the reason why we're hearing that after years of failure that we may actually be able to, in the next 6 months, get some legislative redress for DACA kids. So, and that'll change if we don't keep up that pressure, if they think that that we're no longer paying attention. But I have no doubt that the response from Congress to the president's action yesterday is because we all made it clear that his action was cruel and not consistent with what we want America to be.
Thank you, Jane. I want to send a quick shout out to Ashley Taruno, who is our community organizer, who's been working her butt off on trying to defend DACA. She's an IU grad and just working so hard on it. So everyone, just give her a smile when you walk out because she is exhausted. So that's right. All right. So the last one, and this is the least self-care thing to ask you a self-care question on. In 2 minutes, can you each, so quick response, can you each tell me that we know what you're doing to prevent yourself and the people you work with from burning out? Because it is a long haul. Like Jane said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. How are you staying sane? Because, we're all tired. And I'll just work from Esmeralda back to Jane. I keep doing you at the end. I'm sorry.
Self-care. Personally, I've been taking 30 minutes to myself at the end of the day and just reflecting, no anything around me, just me. But I know within the board of UndocuHoosiers, there's 6 of us that are the main heads, I guess, trying to organize everything. And last year I know that we would take on too much, and because we're yo, this is urgent. But we wouldn't we wouldn't be realistic at times because we're we also have finals to take care of, and policy is great, needs to be taken care of, but is now the time to do it. So something that we've been doing is just trying to recruit more people to help in those endeavors. And that's been phenomenal.
Yeah, spread the work. Alexis?
Cool, self-care. So personally, am I self-caring? Yeah. 2016 for a lot of us is honestly the worst year ever. But I declared that I was going to get more sleep. And that's sleep. Yeah, sleep is very important because I felt I was out of my mind. I felt the burden anyway of thinking about these things is enough. And then having to getting the opportunity to plan things for other people, have these conversations over and over again, that's very taxing. So when you're asleep, what can you do? You can't think about any of this. So that was important. And then, sorry. Actually, for the people around me, I'm actually working with Luma, so the Muslim Student Association, to do a program on self-care and mental health, just because the times are hard. So I want to make sure that I and other people, even if I'm not a part of that group, are holding ourselves accountable to make sure that the people around us are okay too. So yeah, sleep, that's how I self-care.
I'm going to take real quick because you said the sleep thing. It just reminded me. So I like to watch a lot of TV and eat bad food, and that's probably not the best self-care, but it's one night. Well, it's a lot of nights a week. And so one of my best friends came over, and we were yes, we're going to eat takeout. We're going to watch American Horror Story, which came out yesterday, and it's about the election. It's also about scary clowns, really scary clowns. And so I went to bed very freaked out, and started off my night with a clown nightmare. Then it turned into, because it's about the election, a work stress dream. And it just was nope, never again. Okay, sorry. Luma.
You can't catch a break. All right. Okay, so I was in debate in high school, so you'd be surprised how much I'm about to say in 2 minutes.
Yes.
All right, here we go. So like Alexis was saying, health, mental health is really important to me, but like sometimes I think about it like it's this huge grand thing, and really it's just a bunch of little things. So what I do for self-care, I mean, it's hard enough being a college student with a part-time job and president of an organization, and I feel like I have this obligation to activism. So sometimes I feel like it's exhausting. Like I always have to be on, and I'm 20 years old, and I feel like I have to remind myself, I think I have to put in perspective that I'm still a kid. Like I wouldn't, just compromise my values just to have fun, but I don't have to always be this like, I mean, I'm always going to be a feminist, but I don't always have to be like thinking about, well, what about the feminist theory behind this? So I think it's important to just like think, like to remember, like put it in perspective. I like to separate like business and personal. Sometimes I'll be like, I'm not going to look at any emails today. Another really small thing that I do, but helped me a lot, is I don't drink caffeine anymore. Well, like occasionally I drank some caffeine today, but I don't drink any caffeine, and it like drastically changed my life. So I know that's a really hard thing to do, but I swear the placebo effect works really well. I drink a lot of coffee, but it's all decaf. And then lastly, just like friends, like surround yourself with people who, like I was saying earlier, I don't need to validate my problems or anything, to them, because that's exhausting. Like when you're with friends, you don't want to feel like you have to do that, because if you are in the world of advocacy or activism, then you're doing that every other time of your life. So, I mean, some of my friends are here today, and they honestly make me feel really relaxed, and like I can be myself around them. So I think that's really important. Like I think it's a really, like underrated thing. Like friends are really important, and the people you surround yourself will really affect your mood. So.
All right, Christy.
So I started watching the Handmaid's Tale last spring, and how many of you have seen that? Yeah, I know. So I started watching it, and I realized after every episode, like I was so depressed that I thought, holy crap, this is going on in the United States. Like I was really having like the clown dream, like Katie was. And so I decided I really needed to limit my exposure to things like that. So I will watch season 2. So I'll go through another melancholy moment. But it did make me realize that, like some of the others have said, you do need to limit yourself to the constant 24/7 news, NPR, as much as I love it all. But all of us as, activists and really wanting to keep up with current events, I mean, you literally could absorb yourself in it 24/7. And I just don't think our brains are structured to handle that constant low-level, high-alert stress 24/7. And it really, I think, impacts your ability to be effective for your clients and people that you're trying to advocate for. So I've really been trying to limit enough to keep up to date, but limit my exposure. And then in terms of our staff at Planned Parenthood, as you can imagine, some of our staff can feel really stressed out a lot of times. We are often under the gun a lot. We often feel like some of our staff that the world really hates us, when they really don't, but this is the perception. And so I have really tried to say to our staff, we have to have fun every now and then. I know our mission is really serious, but we have to have fun and figure out sometime during the day to have a little bit of fun and sense of humor about what's going on around us, because some of it is so absurd. I mean, you have to laugh at it because at least for a couple minutes so that you can kind of get back on track. And then the other thing that I like to encourage our staff is to, especially with each other in this difficult time, is assume the best intentions from your fellow teammates. Because when you're under stress, you're not always at your best. And I think if you have a great sense of humor and assume the best from who you're working with, it makes the days go a lot better.
Thank you, Christy. Before Jane goes, one thing that we did in the office, because as you can imagine, the ACLU, it's kind of a little bit of a downer sometimes. The advocacy staff and the legal staff, we were all really dragging. So I decided to go to the gas station and spend $17 on snacks. And some of that, don't worry, I didn't charge it to you, Jane. But we set up and we did the Lay's flavor challenge. And so everyone do it. We're team. What's our team? Everything bagel. So try it out. Yeah, yeah. You really should. It's quite a talking point.
Well, I'm learning a lot because I had thought that it was enough for me and for my staff that we have the good fortune of being able to do for our day job. To work to help make our country better. But I'm learning that maybe as a way to take care of my staff is more fun and fewer inspirational quotes about the Constitution. So I've written this down, Katie.
We love them, Jane. Keep them coming. I'll bring the snacks.
And then Katie would totally out me if I didn't say that not just Game of Thrones has helped me, anticipation of it, watching it, yes, dressing.
Me too.
Dressing, I'm in an awesome waif costume. Anybody? No, anybody?
I didn't know you did cosplay.
Yeah, she's badass. But, I was a little despondent that Game of Thrones was over and all the articles. I've read every article debriefing the season. But then came Bruce on Broadway. So
Bruce Springsteen.
Sorry.
The boss.
I could tell that you're not a Bruce Springsteen fan. But the hope that I might be one of the lucky few that gets tickets is getting me through. And if I don't get tickets, then we'll have to address something.
Well, thank you. All right. So on that note,
what my staff said. Oh my God.
we're going to open it for question and answer. So we're going to have Kit and Ashley are going to each have microphones, and they'll be doing the little thing. They bring it. So whoever, Ashley, you want to do your side first, and then Kit next. Ashley's side first, and then Kit will be next. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Thank you all for being here today. I have a question about, I guess, the most recent depressing piece of news. What do you all think the repeal of DACA is going to look like in Bloomington? And at IU, obviously.
So it depends on who you would be looking at. Hopefully on like the more institutional aspect or side of it, there's more action that's taken. That's what we're hoping for, especially since President McRobbie did say that they were going to try to create a safe space and that they were going to take like that legal action of working with state representatives, right? As far as the student body, it just kind of depends on like the individual case, just because it whether they're like a senior and getting ready to graduate, they'll be able to graduate before their DACA would expire. So it just kind of depends case to case.
Mm-hmm. Kit, did you have a little something to add?
I would just add one more thing, just from the national advocacy side of it, where you're going to see a lot of push for a DREAM Act, and something to note about that is that we are pushing all advocacy groups are pushing for a clean, standalone, bipartisan DREAM Act that doesn't criminalize dreamers' parents or use dreamers as bargaining chips for a wall or anything of that nature. So that's something to look out for and call your legislators about.
Yes.
This question occurred to me when you mentioned how after RFRA it had sort of a domino effect, or would have had a domino effect if it succeeded in other states.
Yeah, so certainly we feel the effect, and I mean, all of us, of the legislation. So when we have an anti-abortion bill that we are fighting, that we're litigating, it's often an iteration of legislation that's passed in North Dakota or Texas or Alabama, and that's the effect of advocates. RFRA was a product of ALEC in part, and the sophistication of what came with that legislation. Equipping the legislators who were asked to carry it in Indiana and other states across the country was impressive. But we were able to fight them, with our counter resources. So whether that's materials that we've learned work in other states or don't work. Working with our allies on how to talk to legislatures that are made up of those who maybe not be naturally inclined to our arguments, finding common ground. As far as an organization, we as an advocacy group would not target another advocacy group, but we will target the policies that they hope to achieve and their tactics, and counter their tactics. It's made the ACLU and other organizations change our tactics. We are much more involved in legislation, and because of that concerted effect, because we know what's passed in Arizona, talk about the copycat Arizona legislation and immigration that was 6 or more years ago. That had this ripple effect. 4 or 5 other states, and in addition to Indiana, passed it after it passed in Arizona. So, just up our game and use those same tactics to combat it.
Thanks, Jane. All right, yes.
Hi, I'd first like to thank everybody for coming to educate us and prod us into action and inspire us. My question is for Ms. Henagar. Do you know the state of ICE holds in Indianapolis and nationally? I heard that there was an end to immigration and custom enforcement holds in the jails, but the Department of Justice stepped in. Are you familiar with the state of that in Indianapolis and nationally?
Well, yes and no. We know that what we need to look for to combat them. Indiana has some state law that complicates it in Indiana as opposed to some other states. So every state has to look at ways that we can combat and make sure that people get the due process that they're due under the Constitution as well as under our laws. We one tactic that we are able to fairly quickly combat is those police departments that do a custodial hold in anticipation for ICE without independent reason for detaining somebody, and we can attack that directly as a Fourth Amendment violation. We did that in Indianapolis and got the sheriff there to agree not to do that again. It's going to be incremental, I think. It's going to require coordination with immigration attorneys who are working on individual cases, helping to alert organizations like the ACLU when there are systemic tactics that violate due process. So it's not only unconstitutional custodial holds, but also racial profiling and other tactics that are going to be ways to combat this sort of mass deportation that hasn't fully materialized as President Trump promised during the campaign, but it's certainly up enough that it's concerning to everybody, obviously, and ruining lives.
Thank you. Kit, your side. Anybody? Oh, Ashley, you missed your chance. Right side, or my right side? You look.
Sorry, I have a cold, so if you need me to repeat anything, I'm more than willing to. This question is directed towards anyone who wants to answer it, I guess. I work with the Mother Hubbard's Cupboard Advocacy Working Group here in Bloomington. We believe that every human deserves the right to affordable housing, affordable food, and affordable health care. We are very young and very new. And I was wondering if anybody with smaller organizations or the larger ones had any advice for how to kind of build, or like what we can do, I suppose. Like how, the best way for a small group like ours to make a big difference.
Thank you.
Okay. So, what was your name again? I don't know if yours. Okay, Celestina. Okay, that's a beautiful name. So I'm from the Muslim Student Association. Sorry, I'm gonna does this come out so I can face you? Okay, it does not come out, so I have to go like this. So we kind of have been a bigger presence on campus, and like our organization really fluctuates our members. But last year we were kind of in a transitional year because we noticed that people wouldn't come to events that were not just like social events, and we were always focused on trying to get the most number of people to come to our events. So we would tailor our events toward our target audience that we knew that we had, but then we realized that we weren't really getting anything done that way. So something we realized, and we were restructuring, I guess, our organization, is that we really wanted to value quality over quantity, and we started to make events with intention of with like a certain intention. Like if this is a social event, that's what we're intending. But if we want a philanthropy event, or if we want a social justice event, we shouldn't have to tailor our event. And actually, Alexis and I were talking about this when we were planning the mental health event, but we shouldn't have to tailor our event because we want it to seem like it's more fun, because we're not getting anything done that way. So I guess if you're like a smaller group starting up, or if you're trying to restructure, that I would focus a lot on quality and everything that you do, because you're going to get so much out of it if you have a few people that are involved but are really involved and interested, more than if you have 1,000 likes on Facebook, and I think that that's really something important to take away from that.
That's really awesome. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well,
go ahead.
I'll make it quick. Just kind of going off of that, also just reaching out to different groups for collaborations, just because like I had mentioned earlier, everyone's identity is way more complex than it's perceived to be. And so I think that working with other groups, you're able to bring the knowledge that you know, and then just also incorporate their knowledge to get a bigger meaning out of it, I guess. But also you're sharing the audiences, and so that allows you to expand your networks and all of that good stuff.
I was going to say something similar, is to make sure that you're collaborating with other organizations in the community that may have similar goals. I would even take it a step further in that if you haven't already, is particularly in affordable housing and healthcare and what was the third thing? Accessible food. Yeah. Typically, especially a community like Bloomington, I'm sure has all kinds of strategic plans, either that the city or the housing authority has put forward. All the local providers in the United Way probably have done assessments and planning and have set goals. So it would probably be great if your organization were familiar with all of those plans and what everybody else was kind of thinking, and you could then really thoughtfully think through where does your organization fit in that whole continuum, and that will help, I think, from the others that have already been working in that space for a while would really welcome you, because you would be willing to kind of see what's the lay of the land and how you would fit in.
All right. Okay. So I have time for one more question if it's like a 1-minute answer question. All right. And if not, you can get somebody later. Oh, yeah. In the white.
So this is perfect, actually, because it prevents me from going any longer than I should. Just to give you a little background, I am a high school student at a high school here in Bloomington High School North. And I am a part of the student council and student government there, and we focus a lot on civil liberties and mobilizing students' passion and their particular diversities to find ways to express that in a way that's helpful to not only the North community itself, but Bloomington itself, and in the long run, this country and the world. And so I guess to make this a really short-ended question, what I would ask you is, from my perspective, I have to do a lot of mobilizing other students, and I understand that you three in particular do that a lot yourselves, but this is a question for everybody if they can. What is the most effective and, I guess, best way to mobilize people at a big scheme, a grand scheme, and while maintaining effectiveness in pursuing their causes?
That's a big one.
Just a simple little
All right.
question.
Yes. Okay, so that's just a really easy answer.
Someone had mentioned earlier, like the use of social media. That's a good platform to get people to become aware of what you're wanting to organize. But definitely just kind of like keeping up with one another and like holding actual meetings where you come together to discuss who's going to be doing what, and just breaking it down to like smaller committees essentially. But definitely use social media because you're going to get a broader group of individuals with interest and whatnot.
Pizza helped tonight.
Food.
I always say food.
Okay. All right.
And can I just say sort of
yes.
One thing that the various fights that we've engaged in over the last 5 years, we've really learned that the power of stories, and in those stories, highlighting, identifying our shared interests and values. And if you can show people why what you're advocating matters in using that approach, I think it helps people humanize it and makes it understand the urgency.
I would just add, like, set up some sort of buddy system. Because, people like to go to things if they know they're going to fit in and they're going to be friendly faces there, or there's going to be somebody there that's going to show them what to do and how the organization rolls. So I think buddy systems are always great, because then that person's calling you up and saying, "You're coming, aren't you?"
So I think that's been like literally something I've thought about in my entire time in college. But I was going to say the thing about stories because I love stories. But the biggest thing for me personally has been, how do I mobilize the people who don't come to the stuff that we plan? Because it's like the same people. Like, we know, like, if I planned an event about, Black Lives Matter, I know who's going to come to that. We've been coming to the same things for years. So my question has been, how do I reach out to the people who care less about any of that? And I don't have an answer. But I think that the power of stories is very important. I think humanizing us, because you hear that, I'm using Black Lives Matter as an example, and it's like, the crazy people, they're trying to overturn no, like, I just want to be human. You know what I mean? So I guess finding commonalities in that way. And also, like, if you don't engage them now, like, I think we're in a time where, like, you have to choose a side. And like, I don't know. I feel like there are people who won't be mobilized, but that's been in every like revolution in history. There are people in the civil rights movement who were at home. Not to say it didn't matter, but like, you can't win everybody. We would hope that, but like, I think it's cool to pour into the people who are coming and finding that common ground. I hope that made sense.
All right, cool. Luma, do you have anything to add?
I wish I knew, honestly. If you figure it out, let me know.
All right, well, I want to thank everyone for being on the panel. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much. Have a good night.